The discovery hit me like a ton of bricks. BR, the classy and sophisticated woman at my office, was plastered all over the internet, naked. At first I couldn't believe it. There I was, idly browsing through a series of image boards one night, my mind mostly disconnected, when I saw a blurred photo that I immediately recognized. A birthmark, a small one, right above her left hip. I'd seen it before. BR, or Brittany, was one of those people you couldn't help but notice at the office, a walking enigma. She was smart, successful, and married to some jerk named Carl. I knew her vaguely enough to exchange greetings at work or bump into her during those after-office corporate events. But I never imagined something like this would connect us. I was at this corporate pool party when it all clicked. BR was lounging by the pool, a towel barely covering her legs. That birthmark. And then my mind flashed back to those photos. My gut churned. I couldn't just let it go. I had to tell her, or at least I thought I should. So later that night, fueled by too many drinks and a strange sense of obligation, I pulled her aside. "Brittany," I started, my voice trembling more than I wanted it to. "I saw something online. You need to see this." Thought was the beginning of the end of everything. In look on her face when I said those words, I'll never forget it. It went from confusion to disbelief in a heartbeat, a perfectly composed mask crumbling right in front of me. She blinked, her lips parting slightly, as if she was going to say something, but no words came out. Instead, she just stared at me, her dark eyes clouding over with panic. What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice cracking. I hesitated. How do you even explain something like that? It wasn't a conversation anyone would ever want to have, much less here, but there was no turning back now. I pulled out my phone, showed her the blurred images I had stumbled upon. Her eyes widened, and her hand flew to cover her mouth. No. She shook her head violently, stepping back like the phone was some kind of weapon. "This can't be real. How did this happen? Who did this?" Her reaction was raw, almost primal. She looked as though the ground had been ripped out from under her. I stepped closer, lowering my voice as people nearby started glancing at us. "Brittany, I think Carl did this." The moment I said his name, her entire body tensed. Her expression shifted from panic to anger, and then to something far darker, something cold and calculating. She didn't say a word for what felt like forever. When she finally spoke, it was with a strange calmness, the kind you hear just before a storm hits. "That son of a bitch." I didn't know what to say. I stood there awkwardly, waiting for her next move. It felt like I had dropped a bomb into her life, and I had no idea what the fallout would be. Part of me wanted to help, to fix this, but I didn't know how. What does one even do in this situation? Call the police? Call a lawyer? None of it seemed real. "Where did you find these?" she asked, her voice eerily steady now. "Some random forum," I said, scratching the back of my neck. "I don't know if they're anywhere else, but they're out there. You have to act fast. You act fast." She looked away, her mind clearly racing. Then, as if coming to some kind of decision, she straightened up. "I need to see everything. Can you send me the links?" I nodded. Of course. I did just that, and we left the pool party together without another word. The air between us was tense and thick, with the unspoken betrayal at Carl's hands, my guilt for being the one to expose it, and the realization that both of our lives were about to be flipped upside down. Over the next few days, I found myself drawn deeper into BR's nightmare. She called me at odd hours, frantic and upset. Carl had been posting those photos and videos for months, even years, under different usernames and on various platforms. It wasn't just a few photos, it was an entire library of intimate moments that were meant to be private. She was furious, humiliated, and terrified all at once. And for reasons I still can't fully explain, I became her lifeline through it all. Maybe it was because I had found the photos, maybe because I felt responsible. But the more she leaned on me, the more involved I became. One night, after we managed to get some of the images taken down with the help of a hacker I knew, Brittany broke down. She was curled up on the couch in my apartment, tears streaming down her face as she muttered, "I can't go back to him, Van. Not after this." I knew she was right. There was no going back. Not for her, not for me. What I didn't realize, though, was how much my own life was about to unravel alongside hers. After that night, things escalated faster than I could have imagined. BR didn't waste any time. She filed for divorce, moved out of her house, and started distancing herself from Carl completely. But that didn't stop Carl from trying to crawl back into her life. He'd call, show up at her workplace, send her texts filled with apologies, lies, and excuses. He swore up and down that it was a mistake, that he hadn't meant to hurt her, that he didn't realize the consequences of what he'd done. But Brittany wasn't buying any of it. She'd crossed a line in her mind that she could never uncross. And every time Carl tried to worm his way back in, she only grew colder, more determined. I, on the other hand, found myself more involved than ever. It was late one night when everything took a darker turn. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted, when I heard a knock at the door. It was Brittany. She was pale, eyes red-rimmed and trembling slightly. She pushed past me into the apartment without saying a word and collapsed on the couch, hugging her knees. "What happened?" I asked, already dreading the answer. He came to the apartment again. This time he didn't just beg. He threatened me. Her voice was low, almost shaky. He said if I don't drop the divorce, he'll ruin me. He'll make sure those pictures keep spreading more sites, more people. I felt a wave of rage rise up inside me. He can't get away with this. We need to stop him. Brittany looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anger. I know, but I don't know how. I can't keep doing this. I'm so tired, Van. I sat down next to her, my own mind racing. I wasn't a stranger to solving technical problems, but this was a mess I didn't know how to handle. We'd already taken down as many of the pictures as we could, but Carl still had the originals. The threat wasn't going away. Till night, as we sat there together, Brittany leaned into me, and before I knew it, she was crying softly into my shoulder. I put my arm around her, unsure of what else to do. It felt like the right thing, though. Or maybe it was the exhaustion, the shared frustration, or maybe just the raw vulnerability between us. So whatever it was, it changed everything. She looked up at me, eyes wet but burning with something else, something I hadn't expected. So the next thing I knew, she kissed me. It wasn't some soft, hesitant thing. It was desperate, passionate. Like she needed to forget, to feel something that wasn't pain or betrayal. For a split second, I hesitated. Everything about this was wrong. She was still technically married. I was married, and this was my coworker. But then I let go. I kissed her back, hard, and it all blurred together, weeks of tension, anger, confusion. It all spilled out in that moment, and there was no turning back. So we spent the night together. It wasn't planned, and it sure as hell wasn't something I ever thought would happen, but it did. And when the morning came, neither of us spoke about it. We just shared this heavy, unspoken understanding that everything had shifted. Of course, secrets like that never stay buried for long. 2 days later, Gloria, my wife, found out. She had been growing suspicious for a while, especially after I started spending more time at the office, coming home late, and taking mysterious calls. But this was the confirmation she had been looking for. I came home that night to find Gloria sitting in the dark, waiting for me. Her eyes were hard, lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't yell or scream. Instead, she simply slid her phone across the table toward me. I looked down and froze. There it was, photos of me and Brittany. They weren't explicit, but they were intimate enough. So we were kissing, locked in an embrace at my apartment. "How long?" she asked, her voice calm but dripping with venom. I didn't have an answer. I couldn't lie. The truth was ugly, and it was staring me in the face. Gloria stood up slowly, brushing past me with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. "Pack your things, Van. I want you out." The marriage I thought was stable, solid even through our ups and downs, was crumbling right in front of me. And just like that, the life I'd built with Gloria fell apart. But it wasn't just about me and Gloria anymore. Brittany was in the middle of it all too. And now, there was no escaping the mess we had created. Everything was spiraling out of control. Carl's threats, Gloria's fury, the weight of the betrayal. There was no clean way out of this. And yet, somehow part of me didn't regret it. As twisted as it sounds, there was a sense of relief in letting go of the pretense of being with Brittany, as wrong as it was. We were both broken, both betrayed, and in the middle of the wreckage, we had found each other. But nothing this complicated stays simple for long. Gloria's icy calm that night was 1,000 times worse than if she'd screamed. Her voice, usually warm and welcoming, was sharp, clipped, like she was speaking to a stranger. As I stared at the photos of me and Brittany, images that I didn't even know existed, my stomach knotted up, so tight I thought I'd be sick. Gloria had caught me. There was no denying it, no smooth explanation, nothing I could say that would make this any less ugly. She stood there, her arms crossed, watching me with a gaze that burned with disappointment more than anger. "How long, Van?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. She wasn't yelling because she didn't need to. The cold fury in her eyes said everything. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. My mind scrambled for words, any words that could explain why I had betrayed her, why I had let it all happen. But the truth was brutal, simple. It just happened, I muttered, my voice hoarse. I didn't mean for it to, but it did. So Gloria's lip curled into a bitter smile. That's what they all say, isn't it? It just happened. Or like you accidentally tripped and fell into her arms. She shook her head and sighed, exasperated. You know, Van, I thought we were better than this. I thought you were better than this. The weight of her words crushed me. We had been together for years, built a life, made plans. And now, because of one night, one stupid night of weakness, everything was disintegrating. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but Gloria cut me off, her tone sharper now. You think I'm blind, Van? You think I haven't noticed the late nights, the excuses, the way you started avoiding me? Her words hit hard, because she was right. I had been avoiding her, and she'd seen right through me. I dropped my head into my hands, feeling the walls of the room close in around me. But just when I thought I couldn't feel any worse, Gloria dropped another bomb. And since we're being honest, she paused, her eyes boring into me, waiting for the weight of what she was about to say to hit. I'd been seeing someone too. I blinked, my brain stuttering to process the words. What? I croaked. You heard me. She tilted her head slightly, watching my reaction. I'm not as clueless as you think. I saw this coming long before you did, and frankly I was tired of waiting around for you to come clean. So, I found someone who could give me what you stopped giving me a long time ago. The air was sucked out of the room. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The words hanging in the air between us, sharp as glass. The betrayal I thought was mine alone to bear was suddenly doubled. And worse, I hadn't even seen it coming. Who? The word came out of my mouth before I could stop it. Does it matter? She replied, her voice cold. You've already made your choice, Van. Now I've made mine. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Gloria, who I had always trusted, who I thought I knew inside and out, had been cheating on me just as I had on her. The life we'd built was unraveling faster than I could catch hold of it, slipping away before I even realized what was happening. She turned her back on me, walking toward the bedroom door. I want you out by the morning. And don't try to fight me on this, Van. There's nothing left to fight for. I stood there, feeling the crushing weight of everything, the affair, the lies, the loss bearing down on me like a freight train. As the door slammed behind her, I realized with grim finality that my marriage to Gloria was over, shattered beyond repair. And the worst part, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to fix it anymore. As the night stretched on, the silence of the house wrapped itself around me, suffocating. Brittany's face flashed in my mind, the memory of that night replaying over and over. I should have felt regret, I should have felt guilt, but all I felt was relief. As the door closed behind Gloria, the house felt like a tomb. The walls seemed to press in on me, the suffocating quiet amplifying every racing thought. My life was crumbling in slow motion, and I was powerless to stop it. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the spot where Gloria had been, hearing her words echo in my head. I'd been seeing someone too. I had expected anger, shouting, maybe even tears, but not this. The cold, calculated revelation that Gloria had been stepping out on me too was something I hadn't seen coming. I wasn't the only betrayer in this broken marriage, and knowing that made everything worse somehow. The betrayal wasn't just mine anymore, it was shared. The marriage had been over long before either of us had the guts to admit it. I dragged myself to the kitchen, needing something to ground me. I grabbed a barrel of whiskey from the cupboard and poured a glass, the amber liquid shimmering in the dim light. I took a long drink, letting the burn chase away the numbness that had settled over me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the silence. I looked at the screen. It was Brittany. Part of me hesitated. This was all too fresh, too raw, but another part of me, the part that had crossed the line with her, wanted to hear her voice. I answered, Van. Her voice was soft, hesitant, like she already knew what was going on. Are you okay? I let out a bitter laugh, one that sounded foreign even to me. No, Britt, I'm not okay. Everything's falling apart. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. I'm sorry. This is my fault. No, I said quickly, surprising myself with how certain I sounded. This isn't your fault. It was going to happen eventually. Gloria's been seeing someone else too. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. Oh, Van, I didn't know. Neither did I muttered, swirling the whiskey in my glass. But it doesn't matter now. It's over. It's all over. Brittany was quiet for a moment, and I could picture her on the other end, biting her lip the way she always did when she was thinking. Finally, she spoke again. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to fix this. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Neither do I, but we can't go back, not after everything. Another silence settled between us, this one heavy with unspoken truths. We had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and now we were standing on the other side, unsure of what came next. "I'm scared, Van," Brittany said softly, her voice cracking just a little. "Carl, he's not going to let me go that easily. He's still threatening me, still sending messages." The mention of Carl stirred something dark inside me, the protective instinct flaring up. That bastard had put her through hell, and he was still trying to control her. "We're going to stop him," I said, my voice firm. "He's not going to keep doing this to you." "How?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to stop him." I took another drink, feeling the alcohol fortify my resolve. "We'll find a way. I'll help you. We'll go to the police, hire a lawyer, whatever it takes. He's not going to win." There was a long pause before Brittany responded, her voice small and vulnerable. "Thank you, Van. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You don't have to do this alone," I said, meaning every word. "We're in this together now." The weight of that statement settled over me. Together. Somehow, in the midst of all this chaos, we had found each other. It wasn't planned, it wasn't expected, and it sure as hell wasn't clean. But it was real. "So are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, everything's so messy. You've already lost Gloria, and now you're getting involved in my mess with Carl. I don't want to drag you down with me." I leaned against the counter, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, but also the strange sense of clarity that had come with it. "I'm already in it, Britt. I'm not going anywhere." She didn't say anything for a moment, but I could hear her breathing on the other end, steadying herself. "Okay," she finally whispered. "Okay." After hanging up, I stood there for a long time staring at my phone. The gravity of what had just been said hung in the air like thick smoke. Brittany was in real danger, and I couldn't just stand by and let Carl keep terrorizing her. My own life was in pieces too. Gloria hadn't just kicked me out of the house, she dropped a bomb on our marriage that couldn't be diffused. The whiskey was gone, and the night stretched out before me, long and empty. The bed upstairs felt foreign, a place I no longer belonged. I couldn't go back to my old life, not after what had happened. Everything had changed. So at night, I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had spiraled so far out of control. How had I gone from a stable, if not thrilling, marriage with Gloria to this? To Brittany? To Carl's threats and the disintegration of everything I thought I had? But as I drifted off into a restless sleep, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just about Brittany and Carl anymore. So this was about me too, about the choices I had made and the consequences I was now facing. There was no undoing it. The line had been crossed. When morning came, I knew I would have to leave the house, maybe even the life I'd known for the last decade. I had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain. Brittany and I were in this together now, for better or worse. And deep down, I knew that whatever came next, it wasn't going to be easy. But I wasn't walking away from her. Not now, not ever.